When he said you're overreacting, I let him laugh. But I got the last laugh with one-way tickets. Honey, you're overreacting again. That phrase echoed through my mind as I held 2 one-way plane tickets. One in his name. One in the name of his supposed cousin he kept defending. Spoiler alert, I'm not crazy. But what I did next? That might have been. You know how people say, trust your gut? Well, my gut wasn't just talking. It was delivering a PowerPoint presentation with color-coded charts and animations. For 3 months, Knox had been taking suspicious Thursday client meetings that mysteriously required overnight stays. 3 months of me asking questions, and him treating me like I was auditioning for the lead role in Paranoid Wives of Portland. I'm Bellamy Vaughn, by the way. 34, freelance graphic designer, and apparently the world's most gullible wife. Or so my husband thought. See, Knox was the kind of guy who'd correct your pronunciation of quinoa in front of your friends but forget your birthday. The type who'd say, actually, before correcting you about something you're an expert in. A walking, talking Dunning-Kruger effect in expensive loafers. It was a Tuesday morning when my life turned into a lifetime movie marathon. October 15th, to be exact. The kind of crisp fall day when Portland pretends it's not about to rain for the next 6 months straight. I was looking for our tax documents on Knox's laptop. With permission, I'm not a monster, when I saw it. A folder labeled 2022 taxes that contained exactly 0 tax documents and precisely 2 one-way tickets to Seattle. One for Knox Vaughn, one for Astrid Palmer. Astrid Palmer, not Astrid Vaughn, not his cousin. Just some woman I'd never met, but whose name I'd heard sprinkled through conversations like unwanted parsley on a perfect plate. Oh, my cousin Astrid just loves that restaurant too. Astrid recommended that book, actually. Astrid, the phantom relative who never appeared at family gatherings because she was traveling, or busy with work. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I should have slammed the laptop shut, called my best friend Marin, poured a glass of wine despite it being 10:30 in the morning. Instead, I opened Facebook in a new tab. It took me approximately 90 seconds to find her. Astrid Palmer, 26 years old, interior designer, currently employed at Plot Twist, the same architecture firm as my husband. Her profile picture showed her holding a glass of wine against a sunset backdrop, all cheekbones and blowout and youth. I scrolled further, and there he was, my husband. His arm casually draped around her shoulder at some office party, his wedding ring conveniently hidden behind her hair. I've never understood the phrase seeing red until that moment. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. Crystal clear, high-definition clarity. The kind that makes you realize the past 8 years of your life were written by someone with a sick sense of humor. The tickets were for November 1st, 2 weeks away. According to his calendar, yes, I went full detective mode, judge me, Knox had a final interview with a prestigious Seattle firm that day. A fresh start, he'd called it over dinner last week. Apparently, he'd been planning our exciting new chapter for months, except the hour wasn't me and him. It was him and designer Barbie. Here's where a normal person would confront their cheating spouse, throw things, demand answers, call a lawyer. But I've never been normal. My mother used to say I was pathologically strategic when she caught me selling my Halloween candy at premium prices to the neighborhood kids. So instead of setting his pretentious collection of architectural magazines on fire, I closed the laptop and made myself a cup of tea. Earl Grey, hot, like the rage simmering under my skin. Strategic, I whispered to the empty kitchen of our overpriced craftsman. Be strategic. Because here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you the element of surprise. And Knox had been underestimating me for years. Always the supportive wife. Always the understanding partner who moved across 3 states for his career. Always the one who dimmed her light so his could shine brighter. Well, lights out, sweetheart. I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls. First, to my client who'd been begging me to take on more projects. I'm actually freeing up my schedule, I told her. I can start immediately. The second call was to my own bank account, the one Knox didn't know about, the just-in-case fund that had grown steadily with each private commission I'd taken over the years. The financial advisor on the other end confirmed what I already knew. I had options. Then, with hands that didn't even shake, shock is an amazing anesthetic, I opened my laptop and navigated to the airline website, the same airline Knox had chosen for his great escape. I logged into our joint frequent flyer account, the one he thought I was too technologically challenged to use, and booked a seat on the exact same flight to Seattle. I paid with my secret credit card, the one I kept for emergencies. And honey, this qualified. You might be wondering why I didn't just change the locks and call a divorce attorney. Let me tell you something about justice. It's not a dish best served cold. It's a 5-course meal that should be savored, and I was about to become a master chef. While Knox was busy dreaming about his new life with his not-cousin in Seattle, I sent my portfolio to every design firm in the Emerald City, including, wait for it, the direct competitor of the architecture firm where Knox was interviewing, the one with the better reputation, higher salaries, and corner offices with actual views of the Space Needle. By that evening, I had 3 interviews scheduled for the same week as Knox's big move. Sometimes the universe conspires in your favor. Other times, you have to grab the universe by its cosmic shoulders and give it a good shake. As I sipped my tea that had long gone cold, I couldn't help but smile. In 2 weeks, I would be sitting 3 rows behind my husband and his mistress on a plane bound for Seattle. They would be planning their new beginning. But what they didn't know was that endings and beginnings were my specialty. As a designer, I knew that sometimes you need to completely demolish a structure before you can build something better. And demolition day was coming. The next 2 weeks were an Olympic event in acting normal. I deserved a gold medal in pretending your husband isn't trash, and a silver in plotting elaborate revenge while making his favorite dinner. Every night Knox would come home, kiss my cheek with lips that had probably been elsewhere, and tell me about his day, conveniently editing out any scenes featuring his not-cousin co-star. The Seattle firm called again today, he mentioned casually over the wild mushroom risotto I'd made on Thursday night. They're really interested in my portfolio. I nodded sympathetically. The perfect supportive wife. That's wonderful, honey. Your work deserves recognition. What I didn't say. So does your performance as a decent human being. But sadly, that portfolio is empty. Instead, I smiled and poured him another glass of the expensive Cabernet he loved. The one I'd paid for with my secret account, because contrary to what Knox believed, my little design projects actually paid quite well. While he was busy climbing the corporate ladder at his firm, I'd built my own spiral staircase on the side, one freelance project at a time. I've been thinking, he said, swirling his wine like the amateur sommelier he pretended to be after one wine tasting tour in Napa Valley. If this Seattle thing works out, it might be a good opportunity for us both. Fresh start, new city. The audacity was breathtaking. Here he was, planning his great escape with discount Joanna Gaines, while simultaneously keeping me as the backup plan, the safety net, the participation trophy wife. I've always loved Seattle, I replied, which wasn't even a lie. What I didn't add was that I'd already had 2 video interviews with Meridian Design Group, the biggest competitor to the firm Knox was interviewing with, or that the hiring manager had practically salivated over my portfolio. I know it would be an adjustment for you, Knox continued, his tone dipping into that patronizing octave he used when explaining simple concepts to me or waitstaff. But I think it could really elevate my career trajectory. My career, of course, was just a cute hobby in Knox's worldview, something to keep me busy between redecorating our house and planning dinner parties for his colleagues. A charming quirk, like collecting vintage teacups or having strong opinions about font choices. I understand, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. Sometimes you have to make big moves to get ahead. The irony was so thick you could frost a cake with it. Later that night, while Knox snored beside me, I finalized my own Seattle arrangements on my phone. Meridian Design Group had scheduled an in-person interview for November 2nd, the day after our arrival. I'd also booked a room at the Thompson, a boutique hotel downtown that cost more per night than Knox probably thought I made in a week. The room was under my maiden name, paid for with my secret card. I then did something that might seem petty, but felt absolutely necessary. I researched the restaurant where Knox had made dinner reservations for his first night in Seattle with Astrid. How did I know this? His confirmation email had synced to our shared cloud storage. Amateur hour. It was called Canlis, apparently one of Seattle's most exclusive dining spots with floor-to-ceiling views of Lake Union. I made a mental note of the time and date. Not because I planned to crash their romantic dinner. I had more class than that. But information is power, and I was stockpiling ammunition. The next morning, I woke up early and made Knox's favorite breakfast: avocado toast with a perfectly poached egg. As he ate, moaning appreciatively at my culinary skills, I casually mentioned that I'd be visiting my college roommate Tessa in Chicago the following weekend. "It's been years since we've had a girls' weekend," I explained, spreading a thin layer of almond butter on my toast. "And she just went through a nasty breakup, poor thing." Knox nodded absently, scrolling through his phone. "Sounds good. I've got that conference in Denver anyway." Translation. He had a weekend planned with Astrid in their usual hotel, conveniently located exactly 0 miles from our city. Exactly. Perfect timing, I chirped, wondering if my face would crack from the strain of this fake smile. Oh, and I transferred some money from our joint savings to cover some of Tessa's expenses. She's really going through it. This got his attention. Knox looked up, a flash of annoyance crossing his face. "How much?" "Just 5,000, I said with a dismissive wave. "She lost her job after the breakup. You know how it is." His jaw tightened slightly. "Bellamy, we've talked about this. Large financial decisions should be discussed first." "Oh, like the decision to abandon your wife and run off with a woman 8 years her junior? That kind of large decision?" "You're right," I conceded, eyes appropriately downcast. I just felt so bad for her. The money, of course, hadn't gone to any Tessa. It had gone straight into my escape fund, the fund that would cushion my new life in Seattle, while Knox discovered that his perfect mistress had expensive taste and his new job didn't quite cover the lifestyle she'd envisioned. That weekend, while Knox was in Denver, I met with my attorney, a sharply dressed woman named Vivian who specialized in high-asset divorces and took no prisoners. I'd been secretly consulting with her for weeks, gathering documentation, tracking finances, and building my case. By Sunday evening, I had a comprehensive exit strategy that would make military generals jealous. "The key is timing," Vivian had explained, tapping her Mont Blanc pen against a yellow legal pad. "File too early and you lose the element of surprise. File too late and assets might mysteriously disappear." I nodded, taking careful notes. "And what about his retirement accounts?" Vivian smiled the way I imagined sharks might smile at particularly plump seals. "In the state of Oregon, those are considered marital property, even the ones he thinks you don't know about." As October ticked away and November 1st approached, Knox became increasingly distracted. He worked late most nights, probably finalizing details with Astrid. He made mysterious phone calls from our back porch, speaking in hushed tones. He even started suggesting that maybe we should downsize, and, "Have you considered selling some of your designer handbags?" Translation: he was liquidating assets to fund his new life, and he wanted me to contribute. Little did he know that I'd already moved most of my personal belongings into a storage unit. Nothing obvious, just the irreplaceable things. My grandmother's jewelry, the first edition books my father had given me, the portfolio of original designs that had won me a scholarship to RIST, which Knox had once suggested I donate to make space for more important things. 3 days before our Seattle departure, Knox sat me down for what he clearly thought was a subtle conversation about temporary separation. "I've been thinking," he began, in the same tone one might use to explain quantum physics to a golden retriever. "With this new job opportunity, maybe it makes sense for me to go ahead to Seattle first. Get settled. Find us a place to live." I widened my eyes in practiced innocence. "But I thought we'd go together? Start our new chapter as a team?" He shifted uncomfortably on our overpriced mid-century modern sofa, the one I'd designed and he'd taken credit for among his architecture buddies. "It's just more practical this way. You can wrap things up here, maybe list the house with a realtor." "How long do you think we'd be apart?" I asked, allowing my voice to quiver slightly. Knox reached for my hand, his face a masterclass in false sincerity. Not long. A month, maybe 2 at most. A month or 2 that would mysteriously extend into forever once he'd established his new life with Astrid. A month or 2 that would become, I've met someone, and it just happened, and we grew apart. I squeezed his hand back. If that's what you think is best. On Halloween night, the evening before our flights, I packed a single suitcase with perfect precision. Professional attire for my interview. Casual but sophisticated pieces for apartment hunting. My most flattering jeans and a silk blouse for when I needed to look my absolute best while watching someone's world implode. Knox's suitcase, meanwhile, looked like it had been packed by a teenage boy running away from home. Dress shirts crumpled alongside gym shorts, mismatched socks, a tie with a suspicious stain that I chose not to investigate. "Let me help you with that," I offered, expertly refolding his shirts and organizing his toiletries. Always the helpful wife, even at the end. That night, as Knox slept peacefully beside me, a man without a conscience sleeps remarkably well, I stared at the ceiling, mentally rehearsing tomorrow's script, the carefully timed arrival at the airport, the strategic seat selection, the calculated revelation. My phone buzzed quietly with a text from my future boss at Meridian Design. "Looking forward to meeting you, Bellamy. Your portfolio is extraordinary." I smiled in the darkness. Knox had no idea what was coming. Neither did Astrid. November 1st arrived with the kind of dramatic flair usually reserved for season finales. A thunderstorm had rolled into Portland overnight, as if the weather itself was setting the stage for what was about to unfold. "Perfect flying weather," Knox muttered sarcastically over his coffee, checking the flight status on his phone for the 14th time that morning. "At least the storm's supposed to clear by the time we land in Seattle," I replied cheerfully, knowing full well that the real turbulence would begin on solid ground. Knox nearly choked on his artisanal dark roast. "We?" I maintained my innocent expression, the one I'd perfected during 8 years of marriage to a man who thought he was the smartest person in every room. "Yes, honey. I decided to surprise you. I'm coming along to help you get settled. Isn't that wonderful?" The color drained from his face so quickly I was briefly concerned he might faint on our Italian marble kitchen floor. That would have been inconvenient timing. But we discussed this," he stammered, running a hand through his meticulously styled hair. "You were staying here to wrap things up. The house, your clients." "I rearranged everything," I explained, pouring more coffee into his mug with the steadiness of a neurosurgeon. I couldn't bear the thought of us being apart during such an important transition. Besides, I want to see this amazing opportunity firsthand. Support you properly. Knox's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "That's thoughtful, but I've only booked a small hotel room. It might be cramped." "Oh, don't worry about that," I waved dismissively. "I've made my own arrangements. You need your space to prepare for the interview, after all." His relief was palpable, shoulders visibly relaxing as he calculated this new development. Poor Knox. Always underestimating me. He probably thought I'd stay in my assigned lane, like a good supportive wife, blissfully unaware of his parallel life. "What time is your flight?" he asked casually, already planning how to avoid me at the airport. "Same as yours," I said with a bright smile. "I booked the 11:40 to SeaTac. What a coincidence." The look on his face was worth every penny of that airline ticket. The drive to Portland International Airport was a masterclass in uncomfortable silence, punctuated by Knox's increasingly desperate phone checks, no doubt texting Astrid about the unexpected complication in their perfect plan. I hummed along to the radio, pretending not to notice his panic. At the departures terminal, Knox suddenly remembered an urgent work email that required immediate attention. "You go ahead and check in," he insisted. "I'll catch up." "Don't be silly," I looped my arm through his. "We're going to the same place. Might as well go together." I practically dragged him to the check-in counter, maintaining a death grip on his cashmere-covered arm. The airline attendant smiled professionally as she processed our boarding passes. "Will you be sitting together?" she asked. Before Knox could answer, I jumped in. "Actually, we're on the same flight, but I've booked my own seat." Row 12, I believe. Knox visibly relaxed. His seat with Astrid was in row 9. He thought he was in the clear. We navigated security with the forced cheerfulness of hostages at a dinner party. Once through, Knox immediately checked his watch. I should probably call the office before we board. Why don't you get a coffee or something? Great idea, I agreed. I'll meet you at the gate. The moment Knox disappeared around the corner, I made my move. Instead of heading to the overpriced airport Starbucks, I walked directly to our departure gate and scanned the waiting area. It took me approximately 7 seconds to spot her. Astrid Palmer sat near the window, absently scrolling through her phone, a designer carry-on bag placed neatly beside her pristine white sneakers. She looked exactly like her Facebook photos, only more polished in person, all glossy hair and dewy skin that probably came from drinking absurd amounts of water and having the conscience of a garden hose. I walked straight toward her, channeling the confidence of a woman with nothing left to lose. Astrid? I said, extending my hand. I'm Bellamy, Knox's wife. The color drained from her face, her perfectly manicured hand frozen midair. Don't worry, I assured her with a conspiratorial smile, sitting down uninvited. Knox knows I'm here. I just thought it was time we finally met. He's mentioned his cousin so many times. Her eyes darted frantically around the terminal, no doubt searching for Knox to rescue her from this nightmare scenario. There's been a misunderstanding, she began weakly. Has there? I tilted my head in exaggerated confusion. Because I understand perfectly. You're sleeping with my husband, and you two are running away to Seattle together. The only misunderstanding seems to be yours, thinking Knox would leave his wife without a backup plan. The panic in her eyes confirmed everything. He said you two were already separated, she whispered, that you were filing for divorce. I laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh. Of course he did. Just like I'm sure he told you he never really loved me, that we grew apart, that you understand him in ways I never could. Her silence was confirmation enough. Let me guess, I continued, warming to my subject. He probably mentioned how I never supported his career, how I held him back, how you two share this special creative connection. Astrid's lower lip trembled slightly. Standard issue manipulator playbook. When caught, attack. He said you were cold, that you cared more about your work than your marriage. That stung, I'll admit. Not because it was true, but because Knox had managed to flip the script so completely. The man who forgot our anniversaries, who dismissed my career as a cute hobby, who couldn't be bothered to remember my shellfish allergy after 8 years together. Somehow I was the cold, uncaring one. Fascinating rewrite of history, I remarked, my voice steady. Did he also mention the funds he's been siphoning from our joint accounts? Or that he's been charging your romantic getaways to our shared credit card? The same card that pays for our mortgage? Her eyes widened. Clearly, Knox hadn't shared those particular details. Here's what's going to happen, I said, leaning forward slightly. You and Knox will board this plane. You'll fly to Seattle together. You'll check into your cute little hotel and prepare for his big interview tomorrow. Everything according to plan. Relief flooded her features. She thought I was backing down. Except, I continued pleasantly, I'll be on that same plane. And while you two play house, I'll be meeting with the executive team at Meridian Design Group. You know them, right? The direct competitor to the firm Knox is interviewing with? The one with better benefits, higher salaries, and that gorgeous office space overlooking Elliott Bay? Understanding dawned on her face. You're interviewing there? Not interviewing, darling. Accepting. They made me an offer yesterday. Senior design director. I start next week. I stood up, smoothing my blazer. Oh, and one more thing. I took the liberty of scheduling coffee with Garrett Phillips this afternoon. The managing partner at Westridge? Her voice was barely audible now. The very same. Turns out he's quite interested in hearing about one of his architects planning to jump ship to a competitor, while simultaneously romancing a junior designer from his own firm. Apparently, that violates several clauses in both of your employment contracts. As if on cue, I spotted Knox rounding the corner, his face falling as he registered the tableau before him. His wife and his mistress, deep in conversation. The look of absolute terror on his face was better than any revenge fantasy I'd concocted. "There he is now," I said brightly, waving to my husband. "I should let you two talk. Seems you have a lot to discuss before our flight. See you on board." I walked away, the confidence in my stride masking the trembling in my hands. Phase 1 of Operation Karma complete. As I headed toward the airport bar, because this situation absolutely called for an overpriced airport Chardonnay at 10 a.m., I pulled out my phone and confirmed my afternoon meeting with Garrett Phillips. What Knox and Astrid didn't know was that I had no intention of destroying either of their careers. The meeting with Garrett was real, but my agenda was different. I wasn't going to sink to their level. I was going to rise so far above it that they would need oxygen masks just to catch a glimpse of me. The real twist? I'd discovered something in my extensive research that neither of them knew yet. The Seattle firm where Knox was interviewing was on the verge of being acquired by none other than Meridian Design Group, my soon-to-be employer. If all went according to plan, I wouldn't just be working for a competitor. I would effectively become Knox's boss. I sipped my wine and watched from a distance as Knox and Astrid engaged in what appeared to be an increasingly heated conversation. Their perfect escape plan was unraveling in real time, and I hadn't even played my trump card yet. The gate agent announced the beginning of boarding, and I gathered my belongings. Time for the next phase. Seattle was about to get very interesting indeed. The flight to Seattle was a beautiful exercise in psychological warfare. I'd selected a seat that provided the perfect vantage point, close enough to observe but not so close as to seem obvious. From row 12, I had a direct view of row 9, where Knox and Astrid sat in uncomfortable silence, their body language screaming, "Our perfect plan is combusting spectacularly." Every so often, Knox would glance nervously over his shoulder, only to find me pleasantly smiling back, like a benevolent shark circling injured prey. Once, I even gave him a cheerful little wave, causing him to whip his head forward so quickly I was concerned for his neck vertebrae. The flight attendant stopped by my seat. "Can I get you anything to drink?" "Sparkling water, please," I replied. "I'm celebrating." "Special occasion?" she asked, pouring the bubbly liquid. "You could say that," I smiled. "I'm watching the universe deliver some long-overdue karma in real time." She glanced at my ring finger, then toward Knox and Astrid, making the connection with impressive speed. Her eyes widened slightly as she handed me my drink. "Extra lime wedge for you," she whispered, with a conspiratorial wink. Flight attendants, they've seen it all. When we landed at SeaTac, I took my time deplaning, allowing Knox and Astrid to hurry ahead. They probably thought they'd shaken me, as if I hadn't memorized every detail of their itinerary, including the black Tesla Model Y waiting for them in the rideshare area. Instead of following them, I collected my rental car, a sleek Audi that cost more for 2 days than Knox thought I made in a week, and headed directly to my meeting with Garrett Phillips at Westridge's Seattle satellite office. Garrett was exactly as I'd imagined from our phone conversations, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the confident aura of someone who'd built something substantial from nothing. He rose to greet me as I entered his corner office. "Bellamy, wonderful to finally meet in person," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Though I admit, your call came as quite a surprise." "I appreciate you making time on such short notice," I replied, settling into the visitor's chair. "I believe what I'm about to share will be worth your while." Over the next hour, I laid out the situation with calculated precision, not as a scorned wife seeking revenge, but as a professional identifying a potential corporate vulnerability. I presented evidence of Knox's job search while simultaneously working on sensitive client projects, a clear violation of his non-compete clause. I showed Garrett examples of Knox taking credit for my design work over the years. I outlined how Knox and Astrid's relationship violated company policy regarding disclosure of personal relationships between staff members. What I didn't do was demand their termination. That would have been too obvious, too emotional. "So what exactly are you hoping to achieve here, Bellamy?" Garrett asked, leaning back in his chair after reviewing my documentation. "Professional courtesy," I replied simply. "I'm starting at Meridian Design Group next week. As you know, they're in the process of acquiring Stevens & Blackwell, The firm where Knox is interviewing tomorrow. Garrett's eyebrows rose. I wasn't aware that acquisition was public knowledge. It isn't, I smiled. But I believe in doing thorough research before making career moves. He laughed appreciatively. And Knox has no idea? None whatsoever. He also doesn't know that I've been offered a senior position that would effectively make me his superior if he were to be hired. Garrett studied me with newfound respect. So you're not asking me to fire them? That would be unprofessional and petty, I said, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from my skirt. I'm simply providing information that might be relevant to your business interests. What you do with it is entirely your discretion. And what would you do in my position? He asked, genuinely curious. I considered the question carefully. I'd recognize that Knox has talent, but lacks loyalty and ethics. I'd ensure he remains in a position where his skills can be utilized, but where he has limited access to sensitive information or client relationships. As for Astrid, she's young and impressionable. Perhaps some mentorship and ethics training would benefit her professional development. Garrett nodded slowly. You're quite formidable, Bellamy. Knox clearly underestimated you. Most people do, I replied with a slight smile. It's an advantage I've learned to leverage. After leaving Garrett's office, I checked into the Thompson Hotel, my home for the next 2 nights. The room was everything I'd hoped for. Sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. I allowed myself 15 minutes to soak in the victory of Phase 2 before preparing for the evening's main event. According to the reservation I'd accidentally discovered on Knox's email, he and Astrid had 8:00 p.m. dinner reservations at Canlis. By 7:45, I was seated at the bar with a perfect view of the entrance, sipping a Moscow Mule and looking like someone without a care in the world. They arrived at 7:58, Knox looking considerably more frazzled than he had that morning. Astrid had changed into a black cocktail dress that was trying very hard to say sophisticated, but landed closer to trying too hard. They were escorted to their table without noticing me at the bar. I gave them 10 minutes to order drinks and settle in before making my move. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. Amazing what a generous prepayment and a compelling story about surprising your husband can accomplish. He led me directly to their table, where Knox was midway through what appeared to be a tense conversation with Astrid. Room for one more? I asked pleasantly. Knox choked on his whiskey. Astrid's eyes grew so wide I briefly worried they might roll out of her head. What are you doing here? Knox hissed, looking around frantically as if checking for witnesses to his humiliation. Having dinner, I replied, sliding into the empty seat the maitre d' had graciously provided. This place has amazing reviews. The sommelier is supposed to be exceptional. You can't just... Knox began. Actually, I can. I interrupted smoothly. You see, this reservation is under our joint credit card. The one I pay off every month because you're always too busy. Technically, I have as much right to be here as you do. Astrid looked like she wanted to disappear into her ridiculously expensive Cabernet. I think I should leave. Oh no, please stay, I insisted. I've ordered something special for us all. A celebration of new beginnings. On cue, a waiter appeared with a bottle of Dom Perignon and 3 glasses. Knox's face cycled through confusion, anger, and fear in rapid succession. What exactly are we celebrating? He asked cautiously. Well, for starters, my new position at Meridian Design Group, I replied, watching the waiter pop the cork. Senior Design Director. I start next Monday. Knox's expression didn't change immediately. Then, slowly, the implications dawned on him. Meridian? They're the main competitor to Stevens and Blackwell. Yes, about that. I took a sip of the freshly poured champagne. You might want to reconsider your interview tomorrow. It seems Meridian is in the final stages of acquiring Stevens and Blackwell. The announcement goes public next week. The blood drained from his face. That's impossible. How would you know that? I do my research, darling. Something you might consider trying sometime. I turned to Astrid. Did you know Knox has been applying for jobs in at least 5 other cities? Not just Seattle. Boston, Chicago, Miami. He's been casting quite a wide net. Astrid's confused expression confirmed my suspicion. She wasn't the first, and if history was any indicator, she wouldn't be the last. That's not... Knox sputtered. It's all there in the cloud storage, honey. All those private folders you thought were so secure, they sync to our shared account. Always have. I savored another sip of champagne before delivering the final blow. Oh, and I had a lovely chat with Garrett Phillips this afternoon. Fascinating man. Did you know Westridge is opening a new office in London? He mentioned they were looking for someone to head up the transition team. Someone with international experience. I might have suggested you for the position. Knox's eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? Because unlike you, I don't need to destroy someone to succeed. I placed my napkin on the table and stood. The London position starts in January. It's yours if you want it. A fresh start, just like you wanted. I turned to Astrid, whose mascara was beginning to smudge around her rapidly blinking eyes. As for you, Garrett mentioned something about the Junior Designer Advancement Program. Apparently, they're looking for candidates who could benefit from additional ethics training and professional development. I gathered my purse. The champagne's paid for. Enjoy your dinner. I have a big day tomorrow. Meeting with my new team, touring apartments in Queen Anne. You know, building my future. As I walked away, I heard Astrid's shaky voice ask, "Did you really apply for jobs in other cities? Was I just convenient?" I didn't need to stay for his answer. Some relationships implode quite effectively without any additional assistance. Back in my hotel room, I kicked off my heels and poured myself a glass of wine from the minibar. My phone buzzed with a text from Garrett. London offer officially extended to Knox. Your suggestion was inspired. Care to join our board of advisors? I smiled at the irony. In trying to escape me, Knox had inadvertently launched my career to new heights. Sometimes justice doesn't just arrive, it brings champagne and party favors. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and the beginning of my Seattle chapter. But tonight, I raised my glass to the city lights and made a silent toast to the power of underestimation. Their mistake. My masterpiece. 6 months have passed since that fateful November day when I turned my husband's escape plan into my liberation story. Seattle has become more than a fresh start. It's become home in a way Portland never quite managed to be. My corner office at Meridian Design Group offers panoramic views of Elliott Bay that make me contemplate the universe's sense of humor every morning. There's something poetic about watching the tide roll in and out while sipping coffee from a mug that reads, "Underestimate me. That'll be fun." The merger between Meridian and Stevens and Blackwell finalized in December, creating the largest architectural design firm in the Pacific Northwest. I led the rebranding initiative, which won 2 industry awards and landed me on the cover of Design Quarterly. The headline read, "Bellamy Vaughn, Redesigning Success." The irony wasn't lost on anyone who knew my story. Knox accepted the London position after our dinner at Canlis. According to mutual connections, he's doing fine. Corporate speak for treading water while maintaining appearances. He moved into a modest flat in Notting Hill, far less impressive than the luxury penthouse he'd fantasized about. International relocations are expensive, and the London housing market is notoriously brutal. Who knew? We finalized our divorce in March. Clean, professional, surprisingly amicable given the circumstances. I kept the Portland house, which I promptly sold for a tidy profit, my secret accounts, obviously, and negotiated partial ownership of Knox's retirement portfolio, the one he thought I didn't know about. My attorney Vivian sent me champagne when the papers were signed. "Congratulations on your graduation from the marriage that was holding you back," her note read. "The world is now your design project." As for Astrid, she completed Westridge's ethics training program and transferred to their San Francisco office, as far from London as company policy would allow. Last I heard, she's dating a 45-year-old venture capitalist with 3 children from 2 previous marriages. History doesn't always repeat itself, but it often rhymes. I bought a waterfront condo in Seattle's historic Pike Place Market District. It's the kind of space architecture magazines feature in their dream home spreads. Exposed brick, original beams, wall-to-wall windows. I furnished it exclusively with pieces I designed myself. No more compromising on aesthetics for someone else's comfort. No more pretending that beige is an acceptable color choice for anything. People often ask if I regret not confronting Knox earlier, if I wish I'd saved myself years of being undervalued and overlooked. But timing is everything, in revenge as in design. Had I confronted him at the first sign of trouble, the outcome would have been dramatically different. I'd likely still be in Portland, fighting for scraps of what we'd built together, trying to prove my worth to people who'd already decided my value. Instead, I waited. I observed. I planned. And when the moment was perfect, I executed with the precision of someone who'd been preparing for this moment her entire life. The lesson isn't that betrayal is inevitable or that trust is foolish. The lesson is that self-reliance is non-negotiable, that your emergency parachute should be packed by your own hands, that the foundation of any partnership, romantic, professional, or otherwise, should be built on a ground where you could stand solidly alone if necessary. My mother called last week, curious about my new chapter. She's always been suspicious of major life changes, having weathered few of her own. "Are you lonely?" she asked in that tone mother's perfect, the one that implies your happiness might be a temporary condition. "I'm independent," I corrected her. "There's a difference. The truth is, I date occasionally. I had coffee with the CEO of a sustainable architecture firm last weekend, dinner with a literary agent the week before, a museum exhibition opening with a charming pediatric surgeon before that. But I'm no longer in a rush to define myself through someone else's eyes. Sometimes at night, when Seattle's famous rain taps against my windows, I think about alternate universes. One where I confronted Knox immediately, threw his clothes onto our perfectly manicured lawn, became the scorned woman of neighborhood gossip. One where I never discovered the plane tickets, where I moved to Seattle as planned, as his wife, only to be blindsided later when the stakes were higher and my position weaker. In every scenario I imagine, the current reality emerges as the optimal outcome. Not because it was painless, it wasn't. Not because it was easy, far from it, but because it was earned, calculated, designed with intention, like all my best work. Last month, Meridian named me Executive Creative Director, making me the youngest person to hold the position in company history. My first executive decision was to launch a mentorship program for young designers, particularly women, who show promise but lack confidence or connections. We called it the Underestimated Initiative. Applications poured in from across the country. Life has a way of transforming our deepest wounds into our greatest sources of power if we're patient enough to let the alchemy happen. What Knox and Astrid intended as my ending became the first line of a much better story, one where I hold the pen and control the narrative. They say living well is the best revenge. I disagree. Living authentically is the best revenge. Living unapologetically. Living as if the opinions of those who undervalued you are as irrelevant as last season's design trends. If Knox taught me anything worthwhile during our 8 years together, it's that mediocre men will always find ways to justify their mediocrity. The real power lies in recognizing your own excellence, even when, especially when, no one else does. So here's to one-way tickets that lead to unexpected destinations, to plans that backfire in spectacular fashion, to underestimation as the ultimate catalyst for greatness. Sometimes the best reaction to your overreacting is simply to smile, nod, and quietly plot your magnificent rise.